Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was quirkless and ma. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Slothmin and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Ch.1. The day has come. Chapter begin. Let me spin a tale of a world where the supernatural became the natural. Where to be normal was to be out of the norm. In the late 2020s, strange occurrences began to happen. People began gaining abilities from seemingly nowhere. The first was a baby born in China, born glowing like an incandescent sun. Others began to develop powers soon after. Not a single person has ever deduced as to why these abilities started manifesting. Some called it destiny. Others an act of God, a matter of faith. Most just saw it as what it was, a random power that they had absolutely no idea how or when to use. You can imagine the chaos that ensued. Needless to say, with many people using their powers how they saw fit, people called heroes rose to calm the chaos that had erupted in the world, protecting the masses from those that had a power unique to them. Those who had a quirk. Now, roughly 80% of the world's population had some kind of unique superpower within themselves, a world in which the evolution of the human race had been brought. A world where scenes from comic books and movies had become commonplace. It was in this world that normal people had been forsaken. Men are not all created equal. A self-condescending smirk came into view, the owner's shoes creating the usual flopping sound of footwear smacking against concrete as he wandered around Fujiwara City. Blonde, spiky strands of hair scraping the edges of their eyes, their arms reaching backwards to adjust the orange bandana tied around his neck. Amethyst purple eyes filled with mischief flitting back and forth between people in the crowd before focusing on the path before him. A strong build, walking proudly with his head held high. And lastly, 3 symmetrical whisker marks upon each of his cheeks. Dressed in his street clothes consisting of faded gray jeans, a black shirt, the jacket that began black and faded to red flames on the bottom, his sage coat color scheme reversed and in jacket form, all of it topped off by the orange bandana currently around his neck. This was Namakis Uzumaki Naruto, age 15. Son of the legendary Yellow Flash Namakis Minato and Red Chains Uzumaki Kushina, 2 of the greatest heroes in the world, his father's fame often compared to that of the legendary All Mights. His mother's fame was as equally known. He had come to Fujiwara City 5 years prior, living with his godfather Jiraiya, otherwise known as the Toad Sage, and had attended both the latter part of elementary and was in his final year of middle school. People had often wondered why he had moved in with Jiraiya. His home was a comfortable one, large, and his parents had never once seriously fought and argued. His family loved him, his father's teacher, and his father's students were like family to him. When he was born, his parents and the media at large had expected great things of him, and as soon as he was able to hear, those expectations had always been known to him. He snorted at that certain thought, here he was bitching about his perfect little life. Or at least, it had been. All of it changed on the day he had discovered his essentially useless quirk. Flashback. Ha-chan. At the age of 5 years old, Naruto ran up to a beautiful woman in her late 20s to early 30s with crimson red hair, who was wearing a tan dress, her amethyst eyes shining as she lifted up her son, a loving parental smile on her face. This was the world's strongest female hero, Red Chains Uzumaki Kushina. She giggled, a simple pure laugh of joy at the simple act of holding her son. What is it, Naru-chan? She set him down as he started jumping up and down. His eyes the exact same shade as hers shining as he took a hold of her hand. I want to see Tu-chan again. Being among the world's top 10 heroes, his father Minato was constantly away on work saving people's lives. He didn't mind it much though, as he just chalked it up to his dad being such a cool hero. He could, however, witness his father through the internet. Once again giggling, Kushina began to let her son to their home's computer room, turning it on as a distinct whir began to thrum through the air. Finally, she logged on once it finished and typed onto the keyboard. All the while, Naruto had been bouncing up and down in his seat, awaiting his father's crowning achievement as a hero. His mother left the room, leaving him alone as the sounds of fire and panicked voices began to overtake the room. Oh god. What is he? What is he? He's already saved like 100 people and he's still going out into that mess for more. There he is. A flash of yellow. Wild blonde locks floating in the wind, crouched down and setting 2 people on the ground, wearing a white cloak with red flames on the bottom. Strange, tri-pronged throwing knives called kunai on his belt. This was his father, Namakis Minato. The day his father had debuted as a hero. Another flash of yellow, and his father was gone, the camera focusing to the right as it showed his father flashing between buildings rescuing people and dropping them off once again. Naruto's face lit up in a grin that only a child could muster, full of wonderment and amazement. Setting down another person, his father said his famous line, "Don't worry. I'll rescue everyone in a flash." Naruto leaned forward before exploding out of his chair, jumping around the room. "2chan's the coolest. The best. Better than All Might." A new voice came from the doorframe. "Well, I'm not too sure of that last one." The young Naruto turned his head before his grin once again formed and was soon squished against a leg as he tackled the newcomer. "2chan." He looked up. "You're home." Putting a hand on his son's head, Minato in his hero outfit smiled. "Yep, I got the day off and came home right away. Someday, when I get my quirk, I'm gonna be a great hero like you 2chan." Putting on the grin his son had inherited from him, Minato ruffled his son's hair. "Can't wait for it, bud. Maybe I'll even give you some pointers, eh?" At the thought of his dad, the greatest hero, All Might was too slow in his opinion. Naruto essentially short-circuited, his childish excitement taking over. He ran around the room, cheering. "2chan's gonna train me. 2chan's gonna train me. 2chan's gonna tr." He was silenced as he hit his head on the doorframe. Naruto. Flashback and his parents had attempted to bandage him up. There had been a small cut on his head, blood had been present. And yet when his parents had finally gotten a bandage, his wound had been gone, the only evidence that his injury had been there was the small blood trail from where the cut had been. At the age of 5, he had discovered his quirk. He healed. Simple. If only it was actually useful. They had taken him to the doctor after that to see a professional's opinion of how his quirk would develop. He was crushed when they told him that all his healing would ever do was heal a cut the size of a thumbnail. Small bumps and bruises. That's all it was good for and would ever do. The doctor had told him that, and yet he had hoped that it would grow into something that would make him a great hero. And every year nothing had changed. Anything bigger than a small scratch wouldn't heal as fast, only at the rate of a normal person. He learned this the hard way when he broke his collarbone at age 7 in a desperate attempt on testing his limits, going against what the doctor had said. In society's eyes, he was essentially quirkless. In the minority. Normal. But at the same time out of place. Over time, the media eventually found out and proclaimed his quirk to the world. His parents had tried to ease things. They hadn't neglected him, not in the slightest, they had tried their very best to make sure that he knew that. But being born with the expectations he had been born with and everyone's disappointment in him had been a really big blow to his self-esteem. The real reason he had moved in with his godfather was his father. That night, the night when he had been told of his son's useless quirk, no matter how hard he had tried to hide and crush his feelings, his son had seen it. His son had seen the split-second feeling of disappointment in his father's eyes. He had moved in with Jiraiya 2 years after that. Although he was still boisterous and friendly, he had become a bit more reserved over the years. He bit into his thumb, drawing blood, and watched as the small cut filled itself in an instant. He bit a little deeper, only to get the same effect. He bit even deeper and made the cut wider. This time, the wound remained. Good thing he had developed a high pain tolerance due to his testing of his quirk. He sighed, bringing out a roll of spare bandage, muttering under his breath, "Another fail." He brought out a small pad of paper, writing down another X on the sheet. "Bedawaii." "Ah." Naruto looked up unstartled, seeing a huge humanoid creature bellowing at the surrounding crowd. A quirk like that, and he's nothing more than a petty crook. His amethyst eyes wandered around, seeing many reputable heroes in the area. He didn't have to look closely to figure out who they were, as many of the oncoming crowd did that for him. As a burly tan-skinned man caught a falling telephone pole, a rather plain man next to him named him, "It's the punching hero. Death Arms." The line made of water was made between Naruto and the fight as a fireman used his quirk to control the crowd as well as keep them from harm. "Back away, citizens. This is a rather dangerous situation." "Whoa. The rescue hero backdraft is here too." Naruto stood there calmly as his ears twitched at the sound of air rushing by. Almost nonchalantly, he reached up, grabbing hold of a tendril of wood that had come swinging by before being lifted up as it was retracted. Naruto arrived on a nearby roof, landing on the roof in a crouch, looking upon the new arrival with the same look of mischief and slight boredom on his face. His lips twitched upwards as he rose, rolling his shoulders in an effort to loosen them. "Well," he thought, his mind turning to his caretaker, "training with the Toad Sage will definitely keep you in shape. Listen Gramps, I don't know why you're posing as a new young and hip hero, but seriously, you gotta stop before your hips give out on you or something," he finished, pointing at a figure encased in bark and wearing a blue jumpsuit. The hero laughed nervously. "I haven't the slightest clue what you're talking about, citizen, I am Kamui Woods." Kamui finished, posing with his thumb at his face. Naruto, during Kamui's speech, strolled up to the hero casually before gripping the bark on the man's face and ripping it off, revealing a rather old-looking face. "Again Gramps, you're getting too old for this. Naruto ran a hand through his hair, seriously, Bachan's gonna chew both of our ears off if she found out you're out of the house Hashirama Jiji. Indeed, this hero before him was a senile old man who escaped from his retirement home and refused to retire as a hero. Small red marking under his eyes, black hair that normally would reach his lower back, now specked with gray. This was his great-great-grandfather on his mother's side, Senju Hashirama. The old man growled, "I'm not too old. I'm still in my prime here." He held a lock of hair in his hand, "See? I'm 121 and I'm now only getting gray hairs. Yep, still young and spry." Naruto rolled his eyes, "Whatever you say, Gramps." He gave a good-natured laugh, "You might want to be careful though, not many heroes can control plants, let alone wood, the media's gonna find out you're the plant hero Mokuton instead of Kamui if you aren't careful." Hashirama grumbled, but otherwise nodded, "Fine. I promise not to throw out my hip or anything." Wood reformed over his face as Naruto let a wood tendril wrap around his waist, lifting him into the air. With his duty done, Hashirama turned around to finally subdue the villain. Canyon Cannon. Only to see said villain getting drop-kicked by a gargantuan woman. God damn it. Back on the ground, Naruto stepped out of an alleyway, chuckling to himself, "Man, Hashirama Jiji's still fun to mess around with once in a while." He resumed his walk, or at least he tried to. Naruto. The whiskered blonde sidestepped as a black and green blur barreled past him, sliding to a stop before it hit some trash cans. It was revealed to be a rather plain-looking boy of 14 years. Green-tinted hair that curled in every direction. Average height, average weight, average looks. Yep, Midoriya Izuku was often described as completely plain person. Except his one eccentric obsession. His obsession with heroes and being one himself. Suddenly reappearing in front of the blonde, Izuku held a notebook labeled Hero Notes for the Future and a pencil, smile in place, "I just saw you getting lowered to the ground. You got rescued by Kamui Woods, right?" If there was one thing that made his personality fiery, it was the topic of heroes. Amethyst eyes focused upon him as their owner raised a hand in greeting, "Sup, Deku." Midoriya Deku Izuku was just like Naruto. But while Naruto's quirk was essentially useless to the point of seeming quirkless, Izuku was in fact quirkless, having no talent of his own. They attended the same middle school, the same class even. In a world where everyone had superpowers, these two normal people decided to stick together. They had no real quirks, and everyone knew it. After a while, the other kids had found out about Naruto's status and had lumped him in with Deku, a timid boy with low self-esteem and was always cowering in the face of his friend Bakugo Katsuki. Later, it had turned to genuine friendship when the small cowardly boy had helped him during a fight he had with Katsuki and his goons back in elementary school. It had raised him up to a good guy in his opinion. Flashback. Bring it. Standing in the middle of a playground alone, we find a 9-year-old Naruto, fists curled in front of him, a look of defiance proudly worn across his face. He grit his teeth, seeing those red flames escape from his opponent's hands. The wings that spread from the other. The fingers that extended beyond what was humanly possible. It was a 3-on-1 fight, but he still had to try. Especially after what they said about him and his family. Red eyes stared mockingly at him, well, Quirkless thinks he can finally get some nerve after all. Two cronies laughed behind the boy, his sandy blonde hair swaying with every laugh. Small explosions rising and bursting from his palms. This was Bakugo Katsuki, and behind him stood his two cronies, Yumo and Jin. Oh wait. Bakugo brought a hand to his chin before snapping, "That's right. You actually have a quirk. But it's useless, right?" A quirkless quirk, a malicious grin no child should have appeared upon his face. "Hey. That's not a bad nickname for someone like you. A quirk so useless, yet you can't even call yourself quirkless. Quirkless quirk." Amethyst eyes shone in with rage, "Take it back." Red eyes stared right back, "Make me." As soon as those words left the young Bakugo's mouth, Naruto was already charging at him, fist reared back. Even as it was 3-on-1, the young Namakis gave one hell of a fight, kicking and punching, but ultimately, it was only a matter of time before he made a mistake. Jin's fingers extended and gripped the blonde's leg, sending him to the ground, only for him to be picked up by the two goons and held before Bakugo with his arms held behind his back. For such a one-sided fight, Bakugo and his goons looked no better than the Namakis they had ganged up on, even when using their quirks. This, of course, ultimately pissed off Bakugo more than anything. The explosion wielder socked a hapless Naruto in the gut, already rearing his fist back as Naruto gasped for air. Another fist. Another. Katsuki backed off, heaving for air, expecting his victim to be a crying mess like Deku always turned into. After all, with their normalcy, how could they be any different? Had enough, Quirkle. He stopped mid-speech, seeing that instead of the mess he expected his fellow blonde to be, he was greeted by defiant amethyst eyes. Naruto's face was set in a fierce glare, teeth grit, as defiant as he was at the beginning of the scuffle. "Take it back." Itsuki's cronies threw him backwards onto the sand, dust flying as he landed. Naruto heard their footsteps getting closer, he had to move, he had to get up and make them regret everything they had said. He cleared the dust from his eyes, expecting to see Kitsuki and his group looming over him. He was greeted not by the sight of a taunting smirk like he had expected. Instead, he was greeted by the sight of a similarly aged kid with curly green hair, shaking where he stood, and he could see the tears that were already welling up in his eyes, standing in front of him with his arms curled into tiny fists. "Stop it, Kachan." "Kachan?" Naruto thought, that sounds like a nickname. They know each other. Itsuki's face had turned sour at the new arrival. "Get out of the way, Deku. Unless you want to be like him." Even though the kid in front of him starting shaking even more, he still refused to move out of the way. He could practically hear his teeth chattering. The kid, Deku as Kitsuki had called him, tightened his fists. "This is really cruel, Kachan." His voice wavered. "If you keep doing this, I'll never forgive you. I won't let you do this without doing anything to stop it." By the end of the newcomer's speech, Naruto had already risen to his feet, standing beside Deku as Kitsuki began to approach them, goons close behind. "You don't even have a quirk, Deku." Kitsuki chortled, punching one hand into the other, a small explosion emanating from the point of contact. "You're just as bad as quirkless quirk here. Someone as useless as you shouldn't try and act like a hero." Once again forming fists from his hands, Naruto prepared for a fight, this time with an ally, even if it seemed like he wouldn't be able to do much. Still, better to go down swinging. Ahahaha. Laying on his back, face and body covered in bruises of varying sizes, Naruto Namakis gasped for breath, trying to recover from his melee with Kitsuki and his cronies. Not far away, also on his back in the same fashion, was the mysterious Deku. The scuffle had finished up 2 minutes ago, with Kitsuki and his followers leaving after it became apparent that the fight wouldn't be as quick as they imagined. "Hey." He began, "Deku." He saw the other child visibly flinch at the name. "My name," the rather plain looking of the two said. "My name isn't Deku, it's Izuku." Still breathing harshly, Naruto arched an eyebrow. "Then why did that team call you that?" Salt Izuku mumbled. "What?" the Namakis asked, not quite hearing the other boy. "It's what Kachan calls me when he wants to insult me. Says that a Deku is someone who's useless at everything they try." Izuku responded, eyes becoming downcast as he once again became depressed. "Well, that ain't true." Naruto rasped, receiving a shocked noise from his companion. "Well, we didn't lose this time, and they didn't win. That's a tie." He elaborated, before turning his head sideways to look at the now shocked Izuku. "Would you help me anyway?" "You just looked like you needed someone to help you," came the green-haired boy's response. "Hey then, Deku." Naruto spoke, rising into a sitting position, even as his body protested him doing so, eventually standing up and dusting himself off, stumbling up to the remaining child on the ground and sitting near him. "Yak, no, that sounded like something a hero would have said." Naruto continued, placing his palms next to his hips on the ground. Izuku gasped and remained silent after that. Soon, Naruto heard the sounds of sniffling and stifled tears. He looked over, only to be surprised when he saw that Izuku was holding back tears. All the while in Naruto's confusion, Izuku's thoughts were racing in his head. Why? Not even his own mother had said anything like that ever since he was found to be quirkless. After all this time, why was someone saying stuff like that? "Gosh." The Namakis exclaimed, bopping a fist onto his outstretched palms. "From now on, a Deku isn't a completely useless person." He pumped his fist into the air. "Now, a Deku is a hero that helps others, even when no one thinks he can win." A hero. Hero. Someone called him a hero. This was the key that led to Izuku Midoriya's tears as he let them fall unbidden to the ground. His classmates. His teachers. His own mother. No one else had ever called him a hero before. Izuku's tears finally stopped after a while, ceasing as he wiped them on his sleeves, only to find a hand outstretched in front of his face, its owner smiling despite the injuries on his person. "The name's Namakis, Naruto, wanna be friends?" Flash beckoned. The blonde grit his teeth a bit when he had thought of Bakugo. Asshole. Once he had gotten home after that, he had to quickly explain to Jiraiya what had happened. After he had told him, Jiraiya had begun to train him to defend himself, taking him on as an apprentice of sorts, all the while secretly hoping the Gaki would still try and attempt the path of a hero, despite what others and Naruto himself told him. Naruto cracked his knuckles. Izuku laughed nervously at his nickname. "You know how I feel when I hear that." Noticing Naruto's look, he quickly began stuttering. "But if why you wanna keep calling me then you can't tell Kufyu." He was cut off as Naruto put him in a headlock, speaking in a reprimanding manner, "And how many times do I have to tell you, Deku ain't an insult," he released Izuku, then pumping his fist up and down, "Deku is the guy that backed me up in a losing fight, like a real hero would've." He turned, Izuku joining him as they settled onto the path to school. Izuku blushed a bit from the praise, before a look of realization appeared. "Oh yeah. Remember what we were talking about earlier?" He held up his notebook, "Mind telling me about Kamui's personality, his moves, his outfit, his stance, his eye color, his bark's color, his helmet, hi." Naruto sighed, tuning out the excited Izuku, before once again having his signature grin in place. It certainly was never dull with the hero excitable Deku around. "Okay class. You're all in the final year of middle school." A middle-aged man's voice boomed throughout a silent classroom, students listening in rapt attention. Naruto was sitting in the second seat of the third row, 2 rows ahead of his friend's seat. It was also unfortunately 1 seat away from Bakugo's seat. Great. He had changed into the black school uniform in the bathroom before class, putting his clothes inside of his backpack. He leaned back in his seat, listening to his teacher. "Now is the time that all of you youths are deciding your futures. And you very well should be planning ahead. Think carefully." The teacher was a balding man with hair still clinging for dear life on the sides of his head. His face was serious for about 3 seconds. He burst into laughter as he threw up papers marked admission on them into the air. "But all of you are just going to go into the hero business, right?" At this, all of the class burst into an uproar, unleashing and using their various quirks inside of the classroom. One controlled the wind, while another turned his entire hand into stone. One kid, interestingly enough, pulled his eyeballs and made the nerves stretch far outside of his skull. Useful, right? The teacher raised his arms up and down in an effort to calm the class and gain their attention. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you here have amazing and useful quirks, but please remember that class is in session and quirk usage is prohibited on school grounds." Naruto just closed his eyes and tried to blot out everyone. Until a loud and obnoxious voice boomed over everyone and everything else. "Boy, teach. Don't lump me in the same bag as these others." The blonde's face crunched up in irritation as he recognized who had spoken. Damn it, not another elitist speech from the bastard king himself. Explosively spiky sandy blonde hair, unpleasant smirk on his face, feet on the desk, this was Bakugo Katsuki. "I'm not all that interested in making friends with losers with weak quirks, got it?" Most of the guys in the class had gotten up, bastard king. "Fuck you," Bakugo sneered, "shut the fuck up, you secondary filler characters. Behave like the one-scene people you are." He finished, taunting sneer still in place. He tilted his head, hands in a taunting gesture, "And I bet you all know that I'm applying to UA High School. The one with an acceptance rate of less than 2%. He jumped onto his desk, stomping loudly, "I aced all the mock tests. I placed first in every other subject. I'm going to be the only one in this entire shitty school that goes to UA me. Of course all you secondary characters would be quaking in your boots." He raised his hands before thrusting them to his sides, fully yelling. "I'm gonna be even bigger than All Might. I'll be the highest ranked hero in the entire world. I'm gonna go down in history as one of the richest heroes in the world." He trailed off in laughter, not stopping even as the teacher read a piece of paper. But it also seems that both Midoriya and Namakis are also applying to enter UA. Naruto could practically hear Bakugo's world shattering, his lips twitching upwards in amusement. Of course Deku was applying to UA. It was his dream. His eyes widened. "Wait, I never applied to UA." His face turned blank. "Hiro-sen, you bloody bastard." He was going to tell his teacher, but Bakugo's voice interrupted him. But not before the entire class erupted into laughter. "Seriously? Quirkless Deku and quirkless quirk? You fucking nerds." The whiskered blonde opened his eyes, only to see Bakugo with his hands smoking, his desk in shambles from an explosion that the bastard king had made with his quirk. "You're even worse than Deku over there." Bakugo laughed a bit, "Your quirk's so weak you're basically quirkless." He got into Naruto's face. "You think you can stand in the same arena as me, even if you learned some things from that old bag of warts you call a godfather, quirkless quirk?" The blonde stood up, matching Bakugo's height. "Could you please back off? The only thing that's as bad as your looks is your breath." He fanned his face. "Seriously, is your quirk melting your brain or something? Is that what that smell is?" Bakugo saw red. "What the hell did you say?" "Say your prayers." Naruto raised his fists as Bakugo's hand sporadically combusted. Izuku chose this moment to intervene. "Wait. You. Deku." Izuku flinched at his friend's words. "Students. Sit down now." Immediately, order was restored. "You didn't fuck with Mr. Banner, he'd smash you if you tried." No one liked him when he was angry. "Deku, you sure you're gonna be fine by yourself, right?" Naruto asked. He wasn't so sure about his friend's safety after Bakugo's latest stunt. He had blatantly and openly used his quirk to destroy his desk. "I'll be fine," Izuku said, "it's not like he's going to attack me like some villain, right?" The whiskered student tried to argue, but nodded. If Deku thought he could take care of himself, he wasn't going to believe otherwise. "Hey then, see ya tomorrow." "See ya." Surprisingly, Katsuki hadn't tried to do anything to him after school, despite what Naruto had thought. He was sure the asshole would wait at the street with his goons, but to his surprise, it seemed like they weren't here. He began to walk, back in his street clothes as he had changed after class had ended. He adjusted his orange bandana once again, before resuming walking. He turned a corner, stopping by the local koi fish pond outside the school, taking a shortcut. Thunk. But he held his head, as something heavy and warm had landed on his head. He reached up, grabbing whatever had landed on him, before moving it in front of his face. "Isn't this Deku's hero notes?" He opened the pages, confirming the book to be his friend's. "It's Alchard." His fists clenched, as he grit his teeth. He saw the bastard, grinning and laughing at what he had done. He took a step, and another, and another. Before he knew it, he was running. "Bakugo." The quirk user turned, only to be met with a fist to his face. His friends too stunned to respond as Naruto descended upon their leader, raining another fist down. Another fist. By another. Why? He was being pulled off, Bakugo's goons holding his arms, as the explosion user rose. He could hear the goons laughing. "Give him hell, Katsuki. Show him his place," just as they said, Bakugo had a vein popping in his forehead, fist reared back, "You fucking ner." He stopped at the glare the blonde sent his way, his fist dropping, silent. Naruto's glory was primal. Intense. So absolutely pissed off. Red. Just like all those years ago. "Let's go." Bakugo put his hands in his pockets. Seeing the others not following, he turned his head, his face furious. "I said let's go." They did as he said, letting Naruto go and following him. Soon, they were figures on the horizon. Naruto was left standing there, still holding the charred remains of what he considered his friend's dreams. This notebook was his friend's vision for his future. A sign he still hadn't given up on his dream of being a hero. A dream he himself had given up on. He breathed in deep, calming himself, but not before letting out one final burst of anger. "Fucking asshole." He turned, walking back to the school, seeing his friend Izuku searching desperately around the koi pond. "It's not here, why isn't it here?" "Yo, Deku." Izuku raised his head, seeing his whiskered friend, holding his notebook. "You found it." He hung his head a little, there was no doubt in his mind that his notes were unsalvageable, burnt and unreadable. He felt a hand on his shoulder, stifling his sniffling. He looked up to see that Naruto had his signature mischievous grin. "Watch." Naruto closed his eyes, breathing in deeply, before gripping the notebook hard in his hand. Izuku only stared. For a couple of seconds, nothing happened. Until a soft green glow enveloped the notebook and he could only watch on in amazement as his notebook began to reform itself. The letters and words were once again legible, the pages weren't burnt away. It still looked like it had been charred on the edges, but it was in better condition than it was. It was salvageable. "Nah, Naruto, how?" Said person released his breath, laughing lightly. "Apparently, I can heal items and other things a little as well. Discovered it when I broke a vase in Hirosenen's house." He gestured to the notebook, "Just like my healing, it isn't perfect. Notice how it's still damaged. Hirosenen's vase was like that as well, it was still chipped in certain places." He shrugged his shoulders. "I also can't heal other people or even animals. So it isn't much better than what I already could do. Not really combat efficient, you know." Izuku stared at the notebook. "Deku? Thank you." He raised his head to meet Naruto's. "Thank you." His face lit up. "Hey, if your quirk keeps developing like this, maybe you could become a hero." He regretted his words almost immediately, as his friend's face became cloudy and unreadable. Naruto seemed to notice that he was put off by this and quickly recovered. "Oh, sorry. I just don't think being a hero is what's best for me." "Eh?" Naruto chuckled. "I mean, what could I do?" He gestured to Izuku's notebook. "Even with my quirk, it still can't do its job properly. You think someone's gonna be alright with a weird fixed vase or paper? It'd probably be worse than before. I just gotta face facts. I ain't going to be a hero, even if I wanted to be." He didn't let Izuku respond, as he began to walk away. He even missed what his friend said. "You helped me. You didn't have to. That's what makes you one of my heroes." Damn it, now I feel like a piece of crap. We find our whiskered friend plugging along back to his house, alone, cutting through the local park. He scratched the back of his neck. What if he thinks I hate him now? Or even worse. That I'm emo like that team back home. Oh Kami, that thought alone made him want to hurl. No way, not a chance in hell. During his internal debate, he rummaged through his pockets, eventually finding what he was fumbling around for. He pulled out his hand, and with it was a single object. That object was a single solitary spinning top with nothing decorating it other than the symbol of his mother's family. He had been given this top by his mother when he was a boy by his mother, as a member of the Uzumaki lineage had something on their person at all times that depicted their uncontrollable personalities. His mother's item had been a pocket windmill made of plastic. His mother had given him this spinning top because just like him, the top will keep on spinning and spiraling for as long as it can, despite the numerous adversities it faces. In fact, the only other thing he was talented at besides his physical prowess and singing, yes, he could sing and wasn't ashamed of it, was that he prided himself on making the top he always carried spin for long durations. It calmed him down and helped clear his head. It comforted him. He squatted down, placing the top onto the concrete, searching for the right time to spin it as he pinched it between his fingers. A slight gust of wind flowed across his palms. This was always the same feeling he would get when it would optimize the spin. He let it rip. And for the next 2 minutes or so, sat there enjoying his handiwork that was the top spinning. Although, eventually it stopped. He picked it up, put it back in his pocket, stood up straight, and continued walking. Still he thought, I still have to talk to Iro-Senin about that application to UA, I never filled any paperwork out. It was true, well he did want to be a hero, his quirk wasn't good enough to help him in this endeavor. Others, like Jiraiya, had kept telling him to keep trying and that one day he'll get there. But he had to face facts. Geez, I really am becoming emo like the team. He hung his head before snapping it back up, still. I'll be the best. Damn, he trailed off in thought. What did he want to be if he couldn't be a hero? A ramen connoisseur maybe? He wondered aloud, nah, maybe an actor. A singer. His eyes squinted in confusion, making him miss the shadow looming over him. Maybe I can be a. The Namakis was cut short as he bumped into a larger frame, stepping back and rubbing his forehead in irritation. Oh, just the gaki I was looking for. Came the voice of an older man. The jovial tone at which the voice spoke. The frame the man had. The way of addressing him. Naruto opened his eyes to clarify if it really was who he thought it was. Long white hair done in a spiky ponytail. Check. Red lines under his eyes. Check. Strange, kabuki-esque clothes. Check. Yep, it was Iro-Senin alright. Said pervert snapped his fingers in front of the whiskered youth's face. Oi, gaki. You in there? I got a surprise for you. Moving his hands from his forehead to rub his eyes in irritation, Naruto grumbled, I swear, if it's anything like the last surprise you had, I'm going to turn you into the police. You don't bring a hooker to your house, especially if there so happened to be a young, impressionable kid around and living there. Well, in hindsight, it seemed to Naruto that that might have been intentional, as Jiraiya had tried multiple schemes to try and turn him into a lecher. The old perv certainly didn't seem to have any sense of shame. While he hadn't succeeded, Jiraiya certainly hadn't failed in his quest either. Nope. Was Jiraiya's reply, his tone never shifting from its usual pitch, nothing as sweet and sexy as the last one, but I'm sure you'll be amazed, as it was I, the Toad Sage, who has thought of this great gift. Shifting back to Naruto, said person put on a blank face, is it about my apparent application to UA Academy? Against all societal standards of what men at his age should do, Jiraiya pouted like a child who had been scolded, well, ain't you just no fun? He finished by crossing his arms for effect. Well, yes sir Prius the sage finished lamely, waving his hands a little in an effort to save the grand unveiling he had planned. He placed his hands in his pocket, so yes my apprentice, no doubt you're excited, nah. Over the past couple of years, Jiraiya had been trying to get this kid to rekindle that flame of desire to be a great hero ever since the gaki had given up on it. He constantly told him that it didn't matter as long as he went for it, but his words would always be answered with the usual "yeah sure." It saddened the Toad Sage greatly to see the kid so down after he discovered his quirk. Especially after what he had seen. To this day, he was sure that he was the only one Naruto had ever told him about that night he had seen his father's eyes. Not a single other soul knew the reason why Naruto had left to live with him all those years ago. Iro-Senin Jiraiya was ripped out of his thoughts by his charge's voice. Naruto took a deep breath, you know how I feel about the whole hero thing. Doesn't mean that you can't try. At the sudden words from his teacher and godfather, Naruto nodded, yeah, I know that but seriously. UA Academy. What makes you think I'll make it in, even if I agree to go in the first place? The blonde finished, an eyebrow arched. Fine then. Jiraiya placed his hands in the air like he was surrendering, let's make a deal. He looked at the young Namakis before smiling when he received a nod, if by 3 weeks' time you still don't want to go to UA. I'll stop and let you do what you want. Again, he received a nod from Naruto. But. Naruto groaned, there was always a catch. If you do decide to attend UA, Jiraiya's smirk enlarged, I get to train you like I do right now, but even harsher for the next 10 months until the opening exams. I'll even bring over Sarutobi-sensei to help. His grin became lecherous, giggles no man should ever make escaping his lips. Also, if I win, you have to help me peek one time, at any time and place of my choosing. His face returned to its normal state, becoming once again a grin. Deal. He stretched out his hand. Naruto, for the most part, didn't understand what the all-perv was getting at. There was no way he was going to lose in a bet like this. After all, why would he try to enter UA in the first place? Fine then, at least he would finally be left to his own devices after the bet was over. He firmly gripped the hand offered to him and shook it. Deal. Only to suddenly be pulled close. Yeah. He freed himself from Jiraiya, only to find that he had been dropped off a few feet from where they had been a few seconds ago, a crater where they had once been. What created that crater was a club of solid metal, but if you looked closer, you would see that the slab of metal wasn't a club, but an arm attached to a large troll-like figure made of what appeared to be steel. Damn it. The Croacher turned, its eyes becoming enraged as it spotted Jiraiya. You. Me? The sage said, pointing to himself. What about me? You're the hero that put me behind bars years back. Jiraiya shrugged, so? I do that to a lot of people like you. I can't exactly remember all the two-bit thieves and criminals I've locked up. His answer was met with a hail of shrapnel being sent at both him and his charge. He grabbed the young Namakis by his collar before quickly jumping away. They landed soundly, Naruto looking at Jiraiya and seeing the changes that came with the uses of his quirk. Gone was the human nose, instead being replaced by a bulbous one covered in warts. His body becoming stocky and slightly hunched, as more warts formed on his face, his fingers and feet stretched, becoming more and more amphibian. Lastly, the red marking around his eye formed rectangles, and his hair was freed from its prison, turning into what resembled a spiky mouth. He saw the grin on his godfather's face. Well, Naruto boyo. Great, now he was starting to sound like Fukasaku Jiji. I'll use this opportunity to show you just how amazing heroes are. The Toad Sage exclaimed before launching forward with a great leap. Air rippling from his departure. Naruto didn't expect the fight to last very long, as his godfather was still at the top end of the hero spectrum, even in his old age. True enough, Naruto looked to the battle, seeing Jiraiya easily slipping around his opponent's clumsy swings. The metal man swung downwards, his club arm whistling as it descended. Crash. Once more, a crater was created, leaving Jiraiya nowhere to be found. At least, until the oil started getting sprayed everywhere. Toad technique. Toad slick oil. From behind the villain, Jiraiya then spit a huge torrent of toad oil at the villain's feet, creating the setup he needed to finish this fight. The whiskered Namakis nodded, seeing what Jiraiya was doing. The villain had a hardening type quirk, meaning that ranged and even CQC wouldn't be all that effective, not even his godfather's sharp hair needle Senbon would probably be able to pierce it. So, he had to use that same density and thickness against his opponent. Jiraiya held up a hand sign, his hair once again becoming a large spiky mouth, before it ripped out a nearby stone out of the ground with its jaws and hurled it at the metal villain. Dance of the lion's mane. Jaw. These were the quirks Jiraiya had inherited from his parents. Amphibian transformation and hair hardening and manipulation. He had received his amphibian quirk from his mother and his hair manipulation quirk from his father. He had actually taken Naruto to see his mother's side of the family on occasion, seeing how his cousins were doing while the young Naruto played with their children that were his age. Back to the battle. A stone hit the metal villain, shattering upon impact. But it did its intended job and made the quirk user's balance unsteady, the toad oil rendering him unable to regain his balance. He toppled over not moments later, out cold from landing on his head. Naruto sighed, even as Jiraiya strolled back with the same smug look. Kinda quick, wasn't it? The sage just puffed his chest. Sure, but when you know how guys like this tick, then it's easy. Plus I'm just that good. From his pocket, Naruto handed Jiraiya his phone, who in turn called in the villain retrieval force. What? His powers didn't make him super strong. He wasn't All Might. There was no way the two of them could have carried the large villain back to jail, so it was in times like these that they were thankful that Japan made the VRF for situations just like these. Soon enough, Naruto's ears twitched as the sounds of sirens and cameras were overheard. Where the VRF went, the vultures that was the media were never far behind. With that in mind, Naruto let Jiraiya handle the rest, telling of the villain's arrival and the subsequent short battle. He just took the opportunity to walk away. Bakugo Katsuki just couldn't believe today. Those fucking nerds. They had the nerve to come between him and his goals. They were nothing more than steps for him to use on his stairway to success. Peons so that he would rise to his rightful place to the top. But for Deku of all people to start thinking he could apply to UA his rightful place, not Deku's. He gnashed his teeth, seething in rage. It all started when that Namakis kid started coming to school. Deku always used to shrink away whenever he threatened him. Now the shitbag openly defied him just because Namakis. Namakis. Fucking Namakis. If that pebble with a useless quirk had never existed, none of this would have happened. One day fucking soon. He'd take that damn Namakis down a peg. Walking in a dark alley with his posse, Kitsuki kicked a can in his way hard, the metallic clang echoing and reverbing off of the alley's walls. Seriously Kitsuki, you and that quirkless Deku are childhood friends right? That was kinda harsh, even if he had to face facts at some point. Bakugo kept walking, kicking the can once more, it's his fault for trying to get in my way. That loser needs to learn his place anyway. Jin looked at the faded bruise on his leader's face, and Namakis he just came right at you. Even if his quirk is useless. He's got guts, Namakis. Namakis. Bakugo whirled his head around, leveling a piercing red eye at him. Shut up. Yumo chuckled at Jin's expression of fear, shit man, you already forgot the cardinal sin with Kitsuki. The boom rang through the alley, another one soon following as Bakugo once again used his quirk, even when we were all kids, that bastard didn't know when to quit and bow down to his betters, his glare returned full force, it pisses me off. The glare stopped, as a slight sheen of sweat soon crept upon his form, remembering what had happened back at the playground in the fight they had as kids, and the scuffle they had just an hour or two before. Both times that damn step refused to give in. But his eyes never really showed that absolute fury that they did this last time. Too enraptured in his thoughts to hear his companions screaming for him to move. No sooner was he choking and gasping for air as a foreign liquid invaded his body, entering his nose and mouth, suffocating him. Enveloping him. He watched as his followers were batted away and into the street by a giant metal arm. The cold, calculating voice was all he heard next. Invisibility cloak with a great quirk, I was right in freeing that muscle head to help me. Before the rampage that would soon start happened, Bakugo saw the rest of the metalloid villain, even as he was drowning, hearing mutters of revenge against some old toad. He felt his arm raise against his will, fire erupting from his palms. His arm swung down as he watched it descend towards the civilians on the street. Then the chaos happened. He honestly thought that today could have been somewhat normal after all the abnormal shit that had been going on today. He just wanted to walk home calmly, make some ramen, and go to sleep so he could rest. Simple wants and simple desires. But in a world where the abnormal is the normal, he supposed the world couldn't help being a troublesome pain today, even if it tried not to be. Ring. He ignored it once. Ring. Damn it. He flipped open the phone, holding against a whiskered cheek, what's up Hiro-senin? Naruto, where are you? Near Tatooine Station, getting a ride home. Shit. Just stay put. That villain from earlier He arched an eyebrow, Hiro-senin. He looked at the phone, seeing that his signal had died. Maybe someone fried the telephone poles on accident. Stranger things had happened. He was pretty sure that Hiro-senin was just trying to get him riled up and would try to get him to tell about his glorious and heroic deeds of manliness. He pass, thank you very much. He bumped into another person. Geez, he looked around, seeing that many of the people were looking in a singular direction, usually there aren't that many people heading home this time of day. He remained curious of what was going on. Until he heard the explosions going off not too far from where he was. He supposed that he had always known. That he had always known the fact that he would never really become a hero. Someone as quirkless as he was. Even his hero, the top hero in the entire world, rivaled only by the legendary Yellow Flash, the great hero All Might. Even this great hero had told him to give up on his dreams. By his eyes turned downcast, a self-deprecating smile on his features, I suppose that I've always known, and that I rejected reality in favor of my dream but. Unshed tears threatened to burst from his eyes, as a new wave of sadness rushed through him, I just wanted to be a hero so badly I just wanted to help people. Even as he accepted these facts, he couldn't help but feel ashamed of himself. Here he was, about to cry, finally giving up on his dream. He couldn't help but feel ashamed at the fact that he was stepping on the one friend who had always believed in him now. All those words. I'm going to become a hero. His words, the guy who backed me up in a losing fight like a hero would have. Hero? Ooh. His thoughts and self-loathing were interrupted by the screams and shouts of his fellow citizens. The explosions ringing through his ears. He turned, walking almost like a zombie towards the crowd. Yeah, just watch like you always do. His tired eyes snapped open at what he saw. That same liquid-like villain that had assaulted him before was free. How? He'd seen All Might capture him. It was how he had managed to talk to the hero in the first place. He almost vomited, his eyes wide in horror as he came to a realization. This was all because of me? He saw that the villain was joined by another, a hulking troll-looking creature made of steel, openly laughing as it swung its club, smashing apart buildings with ease. Izuku nearly cried out as he saw someone was trapped inside the liquid villain, just like he had almost been. That could have been him. He looked down, head hanging in shame. "I'm sorry, hang on. I'm really sorry. Someone's gonna come and save you really soon." Still, no other heroes were coming, the ones already present dealing with the fires and flying debris. Someone a hero will come and save you one moment or another, right? Hero? A hero? Memories flashed through his brain. Blonde hair and amethyst eyes, cheering a name that was supposed to mean nothing more than a demeaning nickname. From now on, a Deku isn't a completely useless person. Those words. Now, a Deku is a hero that helps others, even when no one thinks he can win. His friend. I'm Namakis Naruto, wanna be friends. He had been there for him, he had met him, all because he had stepped in and helped him when no one else would. What is a hero? The person trapped inside of the muddy liquid struggled once more, eyes breaking through to finally see the light of day and the fires of destruction. Full of pain, wanting to be saved. A hero in this case is someone who rushes in, with no reason other than to help someone. This time, a hero is a Deku. Ha-chan. All Might's day had been quite rough, you know. Not only did he have to use his transformation for the full 3 hours, he also had to bring a dreamer back to reality, and it certainly was not fun on his part. No, but it was reality. Not only that, but the villain he had captured had escaped, as if that wasn't bad enough, it had freed another villain from the VRF, and it had also joined in on the rampage it had gone on. Shit. Steam released, reducing what was once a man made of hulking muscle, blonde hair with 2 long tufts that stuck out, and eyes coated in shadow, his grin ever present. Now, he was a shadow of his former self. Emaciated. Bones. Weak. Dark yellow eyes peered through darkness caster by his head. Long, disfigured body and neck. This had been caused by a villain's attack all those years ago. And now all he could do was watch as the villains wreaked havoc upon the city. Pathetic. He, the symbol of peace, was standing here, unable to do anything as they did as they pleased. Pathetic. Damn it. He drew a deep breath, calming down and observing the conversations around. Wait, it couldn't be him, right? That blonde in the crowd was Minato's kid. What in the name of all things good and justicely was he doing here? He should be with Jiraiya, right? Why was he in this war zone? Better yet, where the hell was Jiraiya? The crash at his right answered, as a battered Jiraiya crashed into the wall next to him. Damn it, I can't use my toad oil or else this entire block is gonna go up in flames. Shit. Shit indeed. He couldn't transform right now and none of the other heroes could seem to damage either of the villains. Pathetic. Again in the crowd, he saw a familiar face. Midoriya, he wondered aloud. Why was he here? Why was he running straight towards the 2 villains? Ha-chan. He could still hear the explosions ringing through his ears. He could see the damage they were causing. He could see the very same villain he had thought his godfather Jiraiya had taken care of earlier. So why? Why the hell were none of the heroes doing anything? Mount Lady, the gargantuan woman stood there. I can't move unless there's at least 2 lanes of traffic. Gramps Hashirama was there, but he was focusing on saving the people from the damage and the flames. Backdraft was doing the same, standing there and fighting any flames that dared come too close to the crowd. And yet there were still even more heroes on the site. Doing absolutely nothing. He's too slippery. I can't get a grip on him, damn it. I can't hit him. That metal one won't go down. We'll just have to wait until someone with a better suited quirk comes and helps. We can only wait it out until then. Naruto clenched his hands. Bullshit. There was always something you could do. I just have to face facts, I won't be able to become a hero. He stumbled forward a bit. Those were his own words. I can't do it. Nothing I can do. Damned it, his jaw was tight as beads of sweat dripped from his brow because of the surrounding heat. I'm just another hypocrite. How many chances had he had? To try and be a hero if he wanted to be one? He had been trained by Jiraiya to defend himself. He could have done something, damn it. Damn it. He looked up, seeing that the liquid one was struggling to keep his victim down when he caught a glimpse of the person inside. Bakugo. His head ripped to the right upon hearing a familiar sounding voice scream. Ha-chan. Deku. Izuku was here. He looked beyond the crowd lines, seeing that his friend had just surged forward to save some asshole from his childhood. Someone who didn't even treat him with an ounce of respect, someone who honestly hated him. What makes a hero? He saw Deku throw his school bag and using that to his advantage, trying to free Katsuki from his imprisonment. What makes a hero? In this case, a hero was someone who was surging forward even as he was questioning himself and his friend. Who before he knew it was racing to help someone for another's sake. His words he spoke at his first meeting with Izuku rang through his mind. Now, a Deku is a hero that helps others even when no one thinks he can win. Izuku didn't even have any sort of quirk and yet he still rushed in for someone else's sake. What makes a hero? This quirkless person was now facing death. What excuse do I have? I guess it's time for me to be a Deku. And so once again, this time a hero was a Deku. Someone who runs into the way of danger to help and protect others. These kids. Every single one of those kids had to be insane. Minato's kid too. Pathetic. Steam arose from his flesh, his self-loathing and hatred rising. Pathetic. Muscles bulged. The symbol of peace had arrived, grin and all. But not before he witnessed what many would consider the debut of one of the strongest heroes in history. Hey, Death Arms couldn't believe his eyes. Not one, but two idiots had run out there in some vain attempt. Not even his strong fists had been able to grip the liquid villain. His earth-shattering punches didn't even leave the tiniest of scratches on the metal villain. What did those kids think they were running into? Then he saw it. The honesty in the green-haired one's eyes. The panic of the blonde-haired one in a desperate bid to try and save his friend. The faint blue beginning to glow around one's palm. He realized that he was witnessing history. The debut of a new hero. But still these kids had run out knowing nothing of the next events to come. So, Death Arms pondered one single question that came to his mind. What makes a hero? Hey. He ignored the yells of the heroes behind him. He ignored the ringing in his ears. He ignored everything else in order to save his friend. Shit. Deku had gone out and rushed to save Katsuki, but for what? To die. That was Naruto's current train of thought as he saw the metallic villain he had witnessed Jiraiya battle swinging his arm towards his friend. Pastor. He had seen how the one hero's fists had bounced right off. How another hero's bullets ricocheted. How nothing seemed to work against this giant metallic troll. And yet, he still ran in a desperate bid to save his friend. No care for fame or fortune. Just one simple and earnest wish. Let me make it there on time. Let me protect my friend. Let me knock that bastard on his ass. Well, 3 simple earnest wishes. But that's besides the point. Everything seemed to go in slow motion. The arm of metal descending onto his friend. Deku's frantic clawing at the mud-like villain trying to save Bakugo. The fires around him. And he had the strangest of feeling in his palms. He noticed too late that the mud villain was also attacking Deku. This wasn't good. He could have tackled him out of one of the attack's ways. But both? Impossible. He felt that itching feeling in his palms again. He needed to calm down. Make a plan. Anything. And so, he reached into his pocket mid-stride, bringing out his small, spinning top with the Uzumaki crest on it. The itching feeling was stronger this time. Becoming a torrent of nerves all trying to gain his attention. He was almost there. Damn it. This itching though it was getting bigger by the split second. Growing. 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 He saw the mud villain's arm descending. He gripped his spinning top in his hand, the itching feeling still there, before in a last-ditch effort to stop his friend's demise, he chucked the top at the villain's mud strings attached to Bakugo's arm. Strange though, the itching in his left hand, the hand he had thrown the top in, had stopped. That's when his eyes widened. The top was suspended before his eyes, twirling faster and faster and faster and faster. Too fast. It spiraled like a bullet at the villain's arm, tearing the string-like mud attached to its captive's arm, saving his friend from being blown to smithereens. He was almost there, 7 steps away. 1. The metallic villain swung its club arm down faster. 2. The itching in his right palm grew. 3. The arm was closer to his friend. 4. The itching in his right palm turned unbearable. 5. So close to his friend. 6. He ducked under the other arm swung at him, rising in a defiant roar. 7. He raised his right hand, the itching completely gone now, swinging it towards the metallic villain. The hand that contained a spiraling blue maelstrom of power and rotation. The spiraling sphere of blue was the only way to describe it, as that was what it was. Ooh, hi. It hit its mark, the center of the beast before it, its stomach. The villain thought that he would shrug it off like all the other attacks, after all, what was this tiny ball going to do to him? A lot, apparently. He began to double over, his stomach feeling agony as if it was being ripped to shreds. Torn asunder. Being grinded away. Naruto ignored the howls of pain coming from the villain, instead plunging it deeper into his enemy's gut. The raw power was kicking up dust all around him, the wind spinning in a spiral, as if dancing around both him and his target. He felt the ball go unstable, roaring once again as the ball exploded, sending his opponent spiraling backwards, crashing through multiple walls through buildings, before coming to a stop, a large spiral scar-like burn on his stomach. He was vaguely aware of Deku's stare of disbelief and awe, as well as the happiness he felt. He was vaguely aware of Bakugo's stare too, but knew that it was mostly disbelief with anger mixed in. He was so damn tired. What happened? What was that thing? Was that thing from him? And what about his top? It was sent at speed so fast he barely saw it before it left his hand. He was glad he didn't need to think anymore because he moved without warning, spreading his arms out in front of his friend as the mud villain who had seen his comrade get blown away attempted to end the only immediate threat. At least he'd die a hero. Maybe going to UA wouldn't have been as bad as he thought it would, maybe he should have taken Hiro Sennin up on his offer. Nah. He clenched his fist, preparing to swing it forward. If he was going to go down protecting his friend, he was going to go down swinging. The fist caught the villain's hand. It wasn't his. It belonged to the massive man at his side. Well done, Shonen. That big massive grin was the last thing he saw before the dark took over his vision. Beep. 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 Even before he slowly opened his eyes, Naruto knew he was in a hospital. He hated the place. Didn't even serve ramen, the heathens. So, he wasn't surprised by the fact he was in a hospital. He was surprised by the fact that there was a giant blonde man of muscle standing right above him, grinning like he had just gotten a birthday present. Fear not. He struck a pose, for I am here. Due to his groggy state, Naruto was not in the mood. Oh, I fear. I fear very much the man wearing the skin-tight bodysuit that never stops smiling and watches boys sleep. He wished he hadn't said that. He held his ears, that laugh is so loud. Wait, I only heard one person who laughs this loud and it's the only person I know that drops a couple 100 pounds every 3 hours. All Might, did Tucson or Hiro Sennin make you visit? Yes, he was aware of All Might's situation. All by complete and utter accident mind you. He definitely wasn't snooping around his dad's office when he was younger and saw some bodybuilder have an even worse changing problem than that one guy Benjamin Button. He definitely hadn't been sworn to secrecy by his father and All Might either, mind you. He looked to his left, outside of the window. Dark, so it was nighttime. He received another rather loud boisterous laugh. No Shonen, I'm afraid I am here for reasons not either of your caretakers have made. He flexed, before turning into the sickly man he usually was, speaking while coughing up blood. I'm here because of your courageous actions, Shonen. He finished, pointing to the teenager in the bed. Actions? What was? Oh Kami. He abruptly sat up in his bed. Where's Deku and the bastard king? Safe, I assure you. At All Might's words, Naruto sighed in relief. Now, Shonen, I believe it is time to talk about your active quirk. The whiskered blonde nodded and arched an eyebrow. Yeah, what about my healing? He was soon confused by the thin man's head shaking. No, Shonen, that would be your passive quirk. I'm here to talk about your active quirk. All Might soon pointed to a nearby television. Naruto's eyes widened as he witnessed himself use the top to stop the mud villain from harming Deku. It was spinning at intense speeds instead of still in his fingers like he had thought at the time. Then his jaw dropped at his act of taking out the metallic one, the spiraling blue ball he had seemingly conjured out of nowhere. Waha. All Might threw up his hands, taking his most dramatic pose yet. Yes, Shonen, this is your active quirk. Once again, the amethyst-eyed blonde's eyebrow arched. The HHHH. All Might threw his hands down, pointing his finger at Naruto as he coughed up more blood. Your quirk. Your power. Your mastery over rotation. What did All Might just say? Quirk. Mastery of rotation. Minato. Kushina couldn't believe her eyes her son their son. He was shining so brightly on the television. She dropped the dishes she had been doing into the sink, instead listening and watching the news anchor on the TV explain a dangerous situation in progress. Today, at around roughly 6 p.m. 2 villains had attacked Tatooine Station after being discovered by civilians, opting to go on a destructive rampage. We go to the on-site helicopter now. The scene shifted to a top-down view of the villains destroying the district. As you can see, the villains have been causing massive amounts of damage to Tatooine Station for quite so. The anchor paused before the camera zoomed in closer, seeing a green-haired boy run towards the 2 rampaging monsters. Hold on. It appears that a middle school student is running into their midst. What does he think he's doing? No heroes on site have been able to damage either one. The boy threw his bag at the mud villain before trying to free his captive. That's when they saw him. They saw their son. Minato leaned into his wife as she started to shake in fear. Minato. Blonde hair and amethyst eyes chased after the first lad, intent on helping him. They saw as he reached into his pocket before slinging an object faster than almost to the point where even Minato, the yellow flash himself couldn't see it. It sliced and pierced the villain's arm. And then came the ball. Naruto's their son's defiant roar. As he rose and struck the metallic troll-like villain and sending him flying after a second or two of the ball being shoved in his gut. Tears welled in her eyes. When had her son grown up to be so splendid? A splendidly good young man. She sniffled, a mixture of sadness and pride, while her husband sat there in rapt attention. The anchor continued but was interrupted by the female camera woman's voice. What in the bloody hell was that? Did you get that on camera? Tell me we did. Zoom in on IM. Zoom in. The camera did just that, zooming in just after All Might had swooped in and sent the mud-liquid villain flying with a single punch. His blonde hair. His distinguishable whisker marks. The pale shine of amethyst before his eyelids slowly shut as unconsciousness claimed him. Is that Namakis Naruto? Son of the yellow flash Namakis Minato and red chains Uzumaki Kushina. It is. They fell silent. Minato stayed stoic as his wife began to openly weep. She was so happy that her son was safe. So happy he had done something so heroic. So scared that he had been in the way of danger. Minato's gaze softened as the screen faded black after showing his son's face on the camera one last time. Naruto-san, he looked at his hands before once again thinking, I'll make it up to you for failing you as a father, you shouldn't have ever seen that, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. The fourth headmaster of UA Academy looked at an admissions paper labeled Namakis. I promise. And. Time to cry tears of sadness, for I am here with a new story. Face the hell that is my shit writing. Well, don't say that I never do anything for my fans. I did a thing. Because it's true, I mainly write because I enjoy writing stories. Shit that made me sound like an enormous douchebag with an ego the size of Mount Lady. Still true, no matter how much I deny it. Did you like it? Well, depending on your answer, I'm either crying myself to sleep or jumping joy. So yeah, here was my first attempt at trying to write a story that is Naruto born in that world, instead of having him cross over using some Kagaya Sharingan Voryofin Biju Chakra Theskis falling Watashigakita. Black sorcery and voodoo. And I honestly hope it didn't suck too fucking hard. A little explanation to this Naruto's backstory. No siblings, as of yet. Not neglected so much as a single parental mistake. Born with minor incomplete healing of himself and objects. Born with a yet unused quirk. Master of rotation. Basically any non-living thing he touches with his hands, he can manipulate its rotation. So he could speed up a fastball using his power. I plan on explaining it in depth next chapter, so hang on until whenever that comes. Had expectations of his prowess up the Husago, and then had basically everyone saying well ain't that a disappointment. Lives with Jiraiya. Konoha does exist within Japan. No chakra, just quirks. Now for some shit that will happen later in the story. Kids and some age-changed adults will attend UA. Might or might not be sub-teams within the school. Here is in return as Hokage of Konoha, so Minato could teach and lead UA. Pairings are a thing, but I have no idea what they are gonna be, just that I don't write yaoi, because I just don't. I love the ladies too much. 3D ladies. Now I'm gonna be called a normie. Pairing will probably be two girls, because almost every Naruto story ever has him be a pimp god descended from Snoop Dogg himself, because we want to see the whiskered juggernaut get the love he deserves. Why does he have a spinning top? Because I was playing with the idea and this story happened. Well, like it. Love it. Hate it. Wish that both this story and I would return from the dark pits of hell from whence we came and died there. Leave me a review and let me know on how I can make the story better. Because constructive criticism helps us all, as it gets rid of your anger and makes me a better writer. Remember, leave a favorite, a follow, and if you want to a review on the way out, thanks. This is THEWACKNESS 135, signing off. Next time on Spiral Legend. Please stop laughing, the audience doesn't like the author as it is. Worry not, young Namakis. Eku, why am I here again? To help me and All Might perform a next time for the story. Wait, so they're going to be a next time? Damn it, I just want to sleep. You can sleep when you're dead, shonen. All Might, that really sounded ominous. Can I just learn about my quirk and go home already? No, I'm afraid that's next chapter crap, so we're stuck here until the big guy typing puts us out of our misery. Yes, shonen, tomorrow both you and young Midoriya start your 10 month training period for the UA Academy entrance exams. Wait, I never said tha. You promised Jiraiya, did you not? Shit. Next time on Spiral Legend. What makes a hero? Explanations and the 10 month training trip from hell. It's going to be a real doozy. Sure it is. Who else forgot that I was here? Not me Deku, but now we've actually stalled just long enough to hit 13,000 words. Good job. Plus ultra. Chapter begin. Sitting in his hospital room late at night, Naruto Namakis pondered many of the events that had led him to his current position. The day had been quite the abnormal day for Naruto Namakis. This was especially impressive considering that the world he lived in consisted of superpowers and where these heroes made money off of how many crimes they prevented. Also the fact that every petty crime ended up with someone turning into a monster or destroying half a city block and yet nobody batted an eye was just as strange. Ah. Yes. Now to deal with the source of the ringing in his ears. Could you please stop yelling? You're giving me a bigger headache in my room than the one I had before coming to this place. The blonde yelled before hearing a slight decrease of booming laughter in his hospital room. The source of the laughter was an enormous man in his later years, with blonde hair that was slicked back, save for two long tufts that stuck up like long ears. This individual was heavily muscled, eyes cast in shadow, his laughter that was previously decreased coming back in full force. Agah. Before coughing up blood profusely and turning into a much less impressive version of himself. Still as tall as he was before, but his physique was that of a corpse. Long, skinny, emaciated limbs stretched from his body. His top row of teeth almost always showing, his face appearing haggard and triangular in shape. His hair was now dull and string-like, much different from the shining blonde it had once been moments prior. Ignoring the blood flying around, the young Namakis decided to enjoy the near-silent tone of the room, much better. HMMMHH. The skeleton before him cleared his throat before he pointed to the recording on the TV screen in the room, showing just what had put the young lad into the hospital in the first place. It was a rather grand sight to behold. Fire blazed everywhere, civilians' mouths were open in screams that went unheard, heroes everywhere trying to evacuate the populace and keep the destruction at bay. And yet, the culprits had yet to be detained. The duo of a giant humanoid with a bulbous nose and bald head that seemed to be made of pure metal and a giant pile of sludge that had a pair of eyes in the mouth. The mud one had invaded the body of a middle schooler with a powerful quirk, one that controlled the ability of combustion and explosions. All anyone could do was stare on in horror as the villainous duo wreaked havoc upon the city, unable to do anything due to the composition of the villains' bodies were too difficult to strike, as well as the fact they had a hostage. And yet one young man rushed at them without a shred of doubt in his mind, despite all the heroes around yelling at him to stop. His very appearance the very definition of plain, his eyes so full with fear, his curly green hair waving as he ran. This was Izuku Midoriya, an individual born without a quirk, possessing no special qualities of his own, despite his overwhelming desire to become a hero and save others. He was soon followed by another, more reckless individual that wanted nothing more than to make sure his friend didn't die. Blonde, spiky hair was pushed back by the wind. Amethyst eyes fierce in their determination. His whisker marks on his face stretched back as he yelled out to his friend, hand outstretched as he reached out to save him. This was Naruto 4 hours prior. In all this confusion and haste, not even the latest of the two realized just what was happening as he threw an object at insane speeds, tearing through the air like a bullet as it stopped the sludge villain from using his hostage to obliterate Izuku. As he shoved a glowing, spiraling sphere of blue into the other metallic villain's gut and sent him flying through multiple walls. The image cut out soon after, the hero before him, All Might, stopping the sludge villain with a single punch, catching Naruto's prone form in his arms as the Namakas lost consciousness. It was rewinded rather suddenly, back to the point just before the sphere of rotation hit the metallic troll's gut. See? Right there. The emaciated All Might shouted, despite the blood that dripped from the corner of his mouth, this is it. Your active quirk. He finished, his enthusiastic look disturbing the young student before him. Naruto looked on in slight confusion, there you go on again about this active quirk thing. He let his head droop onto his hand as he sat upright from his bed, I already told you, my quirk can only heal me a little, and sometimes objects if I get my blood on them. Seriously, how many times did he have to explain this to the old man? All his quirk did was heal slight injuries, bumps and bruises, that kind of thing. Nothing more, nothing less. The most recent development was that if he could get his blood on something broken, it would be repaired into a haggard version of itself, like a vase would look super glued back together after he was done. It was still something that wouldn't let him do much. TSK, young shonen the hero wagged a finger in front of him before pointing to the paused video once again, you're failing to see the full picture here. If that was all you could truly do, if that was all your potential was limited to, then how would you be able to explain this? The Namakis was about to refute this claim, but was interrupted by the hero once again. All Might cleared his throat once again before he used both hands to simultaneously point at Naruto and the him inside the video. In this world of ours, filled with the impossible, the unseen, and the freakish, you think that anything is impossible. Wrong, I say. He threw his arms up, spreading them outwards. Long before our world saw quirks, people were constantly pursuing and then doing the impossible to achieve what was considered imaginary and make it their reality. Many quirks develop at the ages of 5 through 9. Many of these children then gain massive power and responsibility. And yet how many stood there while you and your young friend Midoriya rushed towards danger? A smirk, well creepy due to his looks, appeared on his face. For the first time in a very long time, me, a pro hero, was inspired by ordinary people. He flinched before looking back to the whiskered blonde. No, I take that back. He once again yelled with youthful energy, I refuse to call such brave young men ordinary. While many would consider your bodies that, your spirit is definitely something that cannot be summed up by a dull word such as ordinary. His hand slammed against a desk, and once again, not even a second sooner than your last act, you once again surpassed your limits, everyone's expectations, and shattered what was considered impossible with your own hands, your own desire to save another. He stared into the eyes of the Namakis, no, the young hero before him. The shackles that you once put upon yourself, as well as the ones put on you by others, have been thoroughly ground away. He smiled, all by your determination. Now, shonen. He held up his hands, his right hand having only one finger held up. In this world, there has so far been one solid rule. He pointed to his held up finger, you either have one quirk. He then formed a fist with his right hand, or you have none, a condition now known as quirkless. Naruto, throughout this rousing speech, was only further confused. Then what you were talking about me earlier doesn't really make any sense then. You just said that a person could only have one quirk, but a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about an active quirk and passive quirk. All Might was only contradicting himself at that point. Just what was he getting at? The pro-hero's booming voice once again sounded as his grin returned full force. That's what I've been talking about this entire time, shonen. He leaned forward, using the desk next to the bed. For eons, humans have been struggling to reach new and greater heights. And due to your determination and desires, you have shattered what has been known as common knowledge for years, after even painstaking research concluding the one solid rule about our abilities. You have made such an impossibility a reality. To further explain, some children can inherit one of, or a combination of their parents' quirks. While some may seem to be completely separate and different quirks, they are in fact the same. The reason for this is, having another ability would put extreme stress on the body, more than humanly survivable. To have such great power flowing through you naturally would be a heavy burden that not one child could carry. He smiled solemnly, I believe your power was supposed to be much more than what it is, definitely more than what it is now. It could have been used to heal, to recover, to relieve so much hate as you went around rebuilding the bonds between people. The teen before All Might was beginning to feel uneasy. To him, the hero was now spouting insanity. What do you mean? How does any of this come back to me? What do you mean by my power being much less than what it could have been? Because. All Might started, in order to relieve much of the stress and burden on your body, your healing is almost always in action, focusing solely on keeping your body in a working condition. The teen was silent after that. If you had been born without this stress on your body, then you could have been one of the greatest healers on this planet. You would have been able to heal from any injury and in turn healed anyone else's ailments with but a drop of your blood. All Might produced some papers from his pocket. Since you were unconscious due to the extreme stress on your body as well as the villains, the doctors saw fit to do some blood work, to run some tests. Uncharacteristic seriousness was shown by All Might, the normally jovial hero matching his gaunt appearance. Naruto Namakis, it appears you are the first person to be born with not one, but two quirks. The ability to heal and the ability to control rotation. The pro closed his eyes, letting the information sink in. This was news that could and certainly will change the boy's life. Knowing what could have been. Not having to have known all that ridicule. Does. All Might looked up, seeing the student before him speak. Does this mean that I can still do that awesome ball thing from before? He nearly choked on his spit. Because. The whiskered teen went on, if I can still do that, I can be a hero, right? The pro started shaking. This was what the boy was worried about. Not any regrets about what could have been. He'd certainly underestimated this kid. The haha. Muscles bulged as All Might was revealed in his full glory. The ha 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 ha. Once again, Naruto covered his ears and tried to wait out the ringing in them. Great. Wonderful young shonen. Not one to think about the past, I like that. Well, yeah. Naruto started, staring at the now muscled behemoth in front of him. I mean, if I still focused on all that stuff from back then, I'd probably be some kind of dark and brooding guy with a stick up his ass. Besides, now I have something I can work with. An excited grin formed, determination now flaring up in his eyes. I can really show a lot of people. His eyes turned gleeful, even the bastard King Bakugo himself will get wets his. All Might raised his eyebrow at this, certainly he wa. And now I can finally look at my kid self and say that we did it. Naruto then rose up, lifting himself off of the bed, his legs sturdy as his feet touched the ground. He looked at the pro hero, before giving his first genuine grin in a while. Thanks for coming here for seeing me. He noticed the bag of his clothes at his bedside, going to the bathroom in his room and getting dressed inside. He emerged, once again adorning his street clothes, his grey jeans, red shoes, black long-sleeve shirt, his jacket that started black and faded into red flames. He finished it all by finishing the knot of his orange bandana, tying it around his neck. He didn't wait for the hospital to discharge him, as he was going to need all the time he could get if he wanted to get started. As he reached the door, he turned to see All Might in his skeleton-like appearance. He gave a smirk before turning and opening the door. Thanks, and you better wait for me when I take that top spot of yours, got it? With that, he left. His day had finally come. Out in the streets, the stars twinkling in the night sky above, Naruto pulled out his phone and tapped a number steadily into his phone. Ring. HELLO. Naruto took a breath. Hey Hirosenin. I see that you're out of the hospital now. I wonder what you could possibly want with little Almi. Damn it, he could practically hear the smugness in the old pervert's voice. The way I'm in. Good choice kid, I'll be waiting. Chaos and confusion among the media was to be expected. Naruto Namakis, who had once been deemed as good as quirkless, had defeated a villain that even strength-type heroes had been unable to defeat. To top it all off, he had done it with a single blow, using an ability that would have proved impossible. He had used a different ability than what his quirk had been known to be. The news has spread like wildfire seemingly overnight. So there was even more confusion when it was revealed that the young lad wasn't still being treated in the hospital and had left the previous night, to many reporters' dismay. Each had hoped to be the first to interview the young sensation, to have the first details about his confrontation from his viewpoint and of course to mainly question him about his new ability. They'd interview the first person in history with more than one quirk. You didn't need to be a doctor to figure out exactly what had happened to the teen. In most of the comics from the past, powers were usually awoken when under extreme stress or appeared at a certain time. Dormant abilities. And it seemed that the threat of the villains was just what was needed to unlock whatever had kept them dormant. They all wondered where he had gone. Amethyst's eyes snapped open, their owner moving from his bed just in time to avoid a kick that nearly destroyed the piece of furniture. Crack. Never mind, it did destroy his bed. Gah. Stumbling away from the destroyed place of rest, Naruto groggily stood up, seeing the culprit staring at him with an almost proud grin. Hirosenin. What the hell? The blonde exclaimed, staring at his destroyed sanctuary. That was my friggin' bed. Why? Jiraiya, in all his perverse glory, stared right back as he lifted his feet from the bed, because Gaki. He removed himself from the rubble, slapping his shoulders to remove dome dust from his clothes. Where we're going, you aren't going to need that. Naruto raised his brow in confusion. A bed? No. The sage's eyes widened impossibly as he smirked. Sleep. The whiskered teen sighed. It was going to be a long day. Where in the name of all that is righteous are we? He studied the surroundings that he had been brought to. It was well outside of city limits, mostly a flat plain, littered with tall rocks and boulders, a few trees around. Except for the two of them, it was completely isolated. Naruto had changed from his usual outfit into a simple pair of black shorts and orange t-shirt. The old toad before him gestured to behind him. This, kid, is where we'll be training your ass for the next couple of months. Your first part of training will be essentially the same as I've always trained you. Drop and give me 200. And so his 10 months had begun. Again. He thrust his palm out. Again. He flowed into another stance, lashing out with a kick. And strike. He finished with a fist, striking at the tree to his right, a dull thud echoing through the now silent air. Naruto Namakis lowered his outstretched arm, his bruises on his knuckles already fading away. He exhaled, his eyes returning to his teacher. Well, Jiraiya stated, resting his chin between his finger and thumb, sitting on a nearby boulder, you're definitely improving your combat skills. Jiraiya had seen it fit to teach the Namakis close quarters combat. He had to admit that the kid had talent in the field, despite using no style previously, instead adopting a brawling approach to fighting. It had been about 2 weeks since he began training Naruto for the UA entrance exams. So far, he'd focused on developing the body. It didn't matter how strong your quirk was, if your body was weak, then you would soon become a liability on the battlefield. He'd barely been able to arrive to school on time and was then training most of the time, praying for the day when summer vacation would come around and he'd be able to get some modicum of decent sleep. He'd been lifting weights, running, even hauling around some of the larger boulders in the area. It was even more troublesome considering that he also had to dodge the media every now and then. Jiraiya then guessed that it was about time to spice the brat's training up a bit. Boy. The blonde turned to face him. And was rewarded with a rubber ball hitting him in the face. Beware. He fell flat on his back, cursing as he stood up back on his feet. Goddamn it, you old pervert. He shot his teacher a glare, as well as a middle finger for his misfortune. He disregarded the ball, instead dodging the newest object thrown at him. But instead of actually dodging it, he caught it almost reflexively, deciding in his mind that this object should not have ever been lost. He looked at the object in his hand, eyes widening in surprise. It was his spinning top, the one he had always had with him since the day of his birth, the very same one that he had thrown to save Izuku. He was sure that he would never see it again. Jiraiya beat him to the punch, answering an unspoken question. I found it amongst all the rubble and crap from that incident, where you had to chuck it. I felt that it would help bring out that other quirk in you. He had been briefed on the situation with Naruto shortly after they had departed, but had made his own deductions beforehand. Now, his job was to make the lad the most badass hero he could be. Try to remember how you felt back then, try and recall. Doing as his trainer suggested, Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on his emotions. Fear, love, hate, despair, hope. To save another. Damn it, now his palms itched again. His palms itched just like before. He opened his eyes, and as soon as he did, the itching gave way and became awe as Naruto stared at the phenomena in his right hand. The top was spinning rapidly, hovering just inches above his open palm, a hum ringing through the air from the rapid rotation. It died. The top slowly halting and falling back into his palm. He closed his eyes. The itching returned, and he focused on that. And once again, the top was spinning. He smiled, his grin turning fierce as he tried to make it go faster, the hum in the air growing as he concentrated. He stood up before rearing his arm back. Oria, he roared, pitching the top forward at a tree, and watched as a moment later the top burrowed itself deep into the plant. A sharp crack was heard as the tree gave way under a lack of support, snapping in two. His eyes sparkled in awe, seeing what he had done. Awesome. He pumped a fist into the air before going to retrieve his possession. The red top looked roughed up but smoother near the tip where it struck the tree. Now he turned towards Jiraiya's voice, only to see the toad sage pointing to nearby rocks and then back to the trees surrounding them. Practice. Again. An outstretched palm. Again. He lashed out with a kick. And strike. He turned, balling his hand into a fist before abruptly opening it right before it impacted a tree. A brief moment before bark flew around him and a large spiral scar burned itself into the wood. This was the progress he had made due to his training. It had been 3 weeks since he had started training his rotation. So far, it seemed he could make just about anything rotate to his will, but only if he timed his intent with the itching he felt in his palms. The only things he couldn't control were those that contained life. Sentient objects made of flesh were among the few things he couldn't rotate. The only living thing that he had discovered he could rotate was his own body. It could be used to help him dodge, add force to his strikes, or even temporarily shift his body in ways he thought were impossible. All due to this itch that he felt. He looked to his teacher, receiving a proud grin. Nice job, seems like you're getting the hang of using it with your fighting style. The self-proclaimed pervert stated. Now, moving on. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Naruto looked on, who is it? Another girl you want to seduce. Even during his training, Jiraiya had still decided to use women to mess with his concentration. It was an effective way to get him to focus in distracting situations, a trait of a first-class hero, as his sensei had said. An amused laugh escaped from the old toad's throat, as much as I wish that were the case, sadly it is not so gawky. He gestured to his right, where a figure was walking. The figure appeared to be an even older man, with gray hair and beard, and triangular hat on his head, a sign of his former title. His pipe propped in his lips, his liver spots wrinkling as he puffed. This was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the former Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure, relieved of his position 3 years prior by his student Tsunade Senju. Konoha was a village of like-minded quirk users, isolated from most of Japan even before quirks had manifested. They were an individual source of heroes, training their youth much like the populace, but their methods were a highly coveted secret. It was prided on many of its elemental wielders, mainly those who were talented in fire manipulation. It produced many unique heroes and had kept their quirks within clans. The first known hero from the village of Konoha was the plant hero Mokuton, otherwise known as Hashirama Senju, was the founder of modern Konoha, deciding to reveal the village to the rest of the world and help the village prosper. It was also Naruto's birthplace. It's been some time, Naruto boy, came the newly arrived person's voice, smooth as a river and as kind as a grandfather. It was a voice Naruto was familiar with, one that he had heard often enough in his childhood. Jiji? The old man nodded, indeed. The reunion was cut short as Naruto narrowly dodged a staff aiming for his head, the elderly Sarutobi throwing away his robes to reveal traditional battle armor. He managed to dodge another thrust but was socked with a reverse blow, skidding from the strike. He looked to Hiruzen as the man spoke, "It's been a pleasure to see how you've grown and how you will continue to grow." He took a battle stance, lowering the large staff at his side parallel to his body. "I, Hiruzen Sarutobi, shall now be your opponent." Naruto felt something strike his foot, a much smaller staff now landing at his feet than the one Sarutobi held. He picked it up. And now Hiruzen began. He reappeared in front of Naruto, the staff raised high above him. "You learn." "Ok. Ok. Ok." Multiple strikes landed against one another as two staffs collided. Two figures slid away from one another as the younger of the two fell to his knees, panting from exertion. Damn, Naruto grimaced before it gave way to a strained look of respect. "I guess you win again, Sarutobi Jiji." It was to be expected that he could never beat the old hero. He had been quite the pro back in his heyday and he doubted that he was any less fearsome now. His skill with a staff, as well as his quirk that allowed him to raise walls of mud and harden them to incredible strengths, was a formidable combination. He hadn't even come close to winning against the former Hokage in all the 8 months they had been training together. The training had entered a new level once school had finished. He now trained all day and most of the night, using every second to his advantage. Hiruzen had drilled into him both on-the-fly battle strategy as well as staff techniques during their time together. Jiraiya had refined his hand-to-hand skills, as well as overseeing his training with his rotation, often setting certain tasks that he could only use his rotation to complete. Sometimes it was tests of accuracy, while others were focused on keeping objects spinning consistently while meditating. He sighed as Hiruzen was going to depart to return to Konoha today, with little more than a month and 2 weeks left until the UA entrance exams. He had definitely made a lot of progress. But there was still one thing that had evaded him. One single thing that he hadn't been able to do nor recreate since the day this quirk had awakened. That spiraling sphere he once held in his hand. No matter how he tried, it eluded him. He couldn't get it to spin fast enough. He couldn't properly contain its eyes. What was he missing? "I'm giving you a graduation test, Gaki," Jiraiya stated before snapping at Hiruzen, "Take it away, sensei." Hiruzen stamped the ground before mud rose from the ground as well as flowed from his mouth. Even Jiraiya had no idea how the former Hokage's quirk allowed him to do that. He clapped his hands together, the mud rising and then hardening into large, strong pile of stone, adding onto the already massive amounts of boulders in the area. Each was about a foot or two taller than him and many times wider. "By the day of the exams, you must destroy every boulder here, using nothing but your bare hands, no tools allowed." The amethyst-eyed youth widened his eyes, "Just how in the hell do you expect me to do that?" Jiraiya gestured to his hand, "I think that you know how I want you to do it." He turned to leave, waving lazily behind him, "Try the death ball of grinding destruction." That was a lame name, rejected. Naruto watched as the two left, their backs growing distant. And soon, they were gone. Okay, he turned to face the many boulders surrounding him, "How am I gonna get the hang of this?" He concentrated on his palms, feeling the familiar itching. "Now." He rushed forwards towards the nearest boulder, thrusting out his arm as he neared it. Whack. Aye. It didn't work. Fighting back his pain, Naruto cradled his now numb right hand. Ooh, this is gonna be a pain, damn it. He looked up at the sky, wondering about something, or rather someone he hadn't seen much of as of late. "I wonder what Deku's up to." Whack. Son of a bitch. Once again, he cradled his arm. It had been 2 weeks, leaving a month left for him to complete his task. He had made absolutely no progress with his endeavor to recreate what he had done all those months ago. Well damn, he had even forgotten his birthday had passed a couple months ago, officially becoming 16. The old bastard didn't even give him his birthday off. He fell back onto his butt, exhaling loudly as he examined his arm and then the rock. What was he missing? He tried upping the power of the rotation, but that didn't really do much. He had tried concentrating it, but that had little results as well. He bit on his lip as he stared at all the boulders around him, imposing now as he realized his current futility. These damn boulders are everywhere. They're always around me, like the rocks are trying to intimidate me or something. And they're all so grouped together. Concentrated. What am I supposed to do? All together. Every direction. Condense. His eyes widened. He stood up before opening his palm, closing his eyes. Concentrate first, rotation. He felt the air around his palm swirl, the itching returning as his quirk went to work. Then add power. The sharp hum filled the air, growing harsher by the second as a disc formed in his palm. Now multiply that same rotation everywhere at the same time. As he used his left hand to manipulate parts of the rotation, the disc hovering across his palm multiplied, twirling, swirling, converging, multiple discs overlapping and forever turning. And finally, condense it all down and focus it all in one place. It took on the shape of a small, hand-sized ball. He rushed forwards, towards that very same boulder he had been trying to break for all these weeks. He slammed his arm forwards, making direct contact with the boulder using his new technique. He could feel the stone begin to turn to dust as all that resilience gave way under his intense pressure, being grinded into nothing more than dust. And just like that, the ball disappeared. He felt his hand touch cold earth as the stone still stood firmly and proudly in its place. Except now it was sporting a serious dent in its hide. Now Naruto began, staring at his right hand in awe. It still has a long way to go. Before, he had only used a single hand and he was sure that it had put an even larger dent in the metallic villain he had used it on. But currently, he now only thought of one thing, a subject that began with his teacher Jiraiya. What kind of name is gonna be cool enough? It was the night before the UA entrance exams, as Jiraiya the gallant strode towards the training grounds he had left his student at in hopes that the kid would come to terms with the last part of his power. At that last stage, there was little he could have done to help the kid with his training in that respect. Even if he had his own hunches. Hunches that he might have left clues in the way the boulders that Hiruzen-sensei built them and how they were positioned. All the Gaki had to do now was figure out what worked best for him. But seriously kid. The gallant pervert looked around him as trees lied snapped in two and seemingly random pieces of the very earth around him were gouged out by some force. Most of the later part of the trail resembled a wasteland, almost barren. Urya. Boom. Another miniature earthquake rattled the ground as Jiraiya kept walking nonchalantly through the shaking. As he came closer, the shouting and explosions became louder and were growing more frequent. After a couple more seconds of walking, he heard his student's voice scream something very peculiar. Rasengan. Once again the earth shook as Jiraiya looked upon the clearing he had trained Naruto in. All of the boulders that had once been there were all gone, seemingly annihilated without a trace. The only thing that seemed to testify that they once stood there was the massive amounts of dust in the air. That's when he saw him. Naruto. Standing over the remains of the last boulder in his sight, the final boulder that he had to destroy, joy and relief flooded his mind as he raised his right hand, once again forming a blue sphere in it. He slammed it into the ground, finishing off the first boulder he had first tested his technique on, as dirt flew in all directions around him. Jiraiya watched as the dust cleared and his student's body came into view. Well-developed muscles that were made for fighting with speed and precision. Dirt covering his form as he wiped the sweat from his brow. And finally, Jiraiya felt pride as his student reared his head back. And roared in defiance to the world. Urya. Exhausted, the young rotation user let his head droop as his sweat reflected in the moonlight. Panting, he fell to his knees as he finally finished his task. He jerked as a hand touched his left shoulder, looking up and relaxing after seeing who it was, hey Rosenaha. He was about to say more, but was silenced by the look of pure and utter pride and joy in his teacher's face. Time to go home and get cleaned up, kid. He grinned maniacally. Pause when you get up, you're gonna prove just how hard you work to the world and show them how much of a badass hero you became thanks to your badass teacher. His student returned the same grin, eyes reflecting his eagerness. Naruto rose to his feet as he stumbled forward and was supported by Jiraiya. Look out UA. Naruto Namakis is coming knockin'. What if Naruto was quirkless in my end here and thanks for watching my video till the end.